All right. I'm Melissa Turner with bmagazine.org, and I'm joined by Geoffrey Mock. He is the Egypt country specialist for Amnesty International USA. Geoffrey, just to get us started off, can you tell us a little bit about what you do as a country specialist?
Well, I'm a volunteer leader with Amnesty International USA, and I work both with our staff, with our international research team, with our membership, and with partner groups and just about anyone else collaborating to make sure that Amnesty's concerns on human rights in Egypt get raised and put to effective use.
Yes. And Geoffrey, we were talking just before we got started here about how concerning it is that Egypt has been chosen as the staging place for the UN's COP27 this year. Tell us just a little bit more about why that is so concerning.
Well, because the Egyptian government has a strong record or a bad record of muzzling civil society. And this is a conference in which civil society activists, more than almost any other conference I can imagine, needs to be able to have the opportunity to have their voices raised. The climate issue is one that has to be heard. They have to be heard on these climate discussions. And so to put it in a country which has effectively criminalized all demonstrations, which has thrown any expression of independent political ideas, people who give those independent political ideas, into jail, who has muzzled civil society, is extremely concerning. Add on top to that some of the statements from the Egyptian government that have already been made and some of the actions that they have taken. For example, they are saying that they are going to create a space for public demonstrations, for the expression of views, but it's nowhere really near the conference hall. They seem to be taking every step they can get to ensure that the voices that have to be heard are separated from the actual discussions.
Yeah.
And we could go into far more details, but this is problematic on so many different areas. Their history, for example, they hosted an African Commission conference that brought in countries from across the continent, and they clearly denied visas and denied entry to a number of important voices that needed to be heard at that conference. And we just expect this to be repeated at the COP conference.
Well, I'm glad that Amnesty and other human rights organizations are speaking out on this and raising awareness about the concerns. Amnesty put out a pretty strong statement back in May and followed up with some additional statements in July. Can you tell us a little bit about what that statement said and what, if any, kind of feedback or response you've gotten since that's been published?
Well, what those statements did was put our concerns of the conference into a wider context of the overall human rights record of Egypt. We would like them to use this conference as an opportunity to open Egypt to civil society, as once was, because Egypt has this history of a very vigorous civil society. But now they have civil society activists, as I said, in jail. Haven't gone into the part about their travel bans. A number of the key voices on environmental issues in particular have travel bans on them. Now, we think of travel bans as being something that prevents them from going abroad and speaking out abroad, but it also has a domestic content. So if these people are on a trip to the conference, which is not in a large populated area, and they will have to go through a number of roadblocks. And it's quite possible that those they could lead to arrest and detention of these activists. And anyone that engages in political activity at the conference is at risk for detention and arrest. And
Mm.
people who are at risk for arrest are at risk for torture, because torture is systematic in the Egyptian penitentiaries and security systems. And there's also one other concern, that is that this is a small, Sharma is a small town. There's just not enough hotel rooms and hotel spaces for all of the people that will want to be heard at this conference to attend. And we're also very concerned. We're seeing early notice that the airplane charges and hotel bills rates are skyrocketing. So
Mhm.
we think this is going to put the conference out of financial reach of a lot of, again, very small. A lot of these NGOs are very small and come from small countries, and they're the ones, again, I'm sorry, I keep repeating it. There are so many voices that have to be heard at this conference, and they're taking so many steps that look like they're trying to stop these voices from attending.
Mm. That's very concerning. So, have you gotten any response that is noteworthy since these statements have been made?
From the Egyptian government, nothing positive has come. We would like to see them move this area of demonstration, this safe space for demonstration, to a place that would be more effective for people to appear. We've not seen that. We're not really pleased with the whole idea of restricting demonstrations to the area. That's always a red flag, just on the basis of that. We have actually met with the U.S. government specifically on this issue, and I think I can say we had a very vigorous and conversations with State Department officials
Mhm.
on this,
Good.
and they were very receptive to what we were saying. But as activists, we cannot depend on the U.S. government. We cannot just leave it to the U.S. government to do the right thing. And I'm not even sure how much leverage the U.S. government has. There's always this assumption that if we say something and snap our fingers, the Egyptians are going to do it. And there's just
Right.
not a history of that.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we do engagement with other activists. There are people that we need to be talking to whose voices are heard within the CC government.
Mhm.
So there's that. If I'm a person that I know prominent Egyptians, I should be writing them saying, this is
Mm.
something that's concerning. What can you do? If there's persons that have engagement with the Egyptian government that we know, is we should do the same. We can't just rely on government sources to be effective on this. We have to look wider.
Absolutely. So, Geoffrey, just to continue that thought, what can other activists
Mm.
and even just concerned citizens do to take action on this concern, and also just the human rights issues and climate change and the intersections of those as well?
Yeah, Amnesty's focus is very much on our traditional human rights issues involving civil
Mhm.
society, but a number of these people are environmental activists that we've been working on. So that's
Mhm.
one thing. But
Yeah.
the issues of environmental justice are far wider than just these things that we have focused on in our statement. So
Right.
we're working, so we need to get those issues raised again. Amnesty, and there are a number of organizations that are doing so and that we want to partner with and are partnering with.
Mhm.
Now, what individuals are doing is I say we can't focus on the US government, but the very first thing I am doing is telling Amnesty members to contact their congressman.
Mm.
Because it
Yes.
can't hurt. This is
Absolutely.
not a bad thing because the State Department needs to hear from the congressman. The Egyptian government needs to hear from U.S. government. There are funding bills coming up right now that impact the government, the Egyptian government, and U.S. aid for the Egyptian government. This is a critical time for U.S. political voices to be heard. So that's step one: contact your congressman. But again, the other thing is that in your community you have people who seek out those people who are, whether they're environmental activists or whether they're people that are important in the Egyptian community, and involve them because we've got to get a variety of voices
Yes.
talking about this. Otherwise, our record of moving the Sisi government is not as strong as I would like it to be.
Yes. We have work to do.
We have work to do, yes.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for joining us and talking more about the concerns and the statement that Amnesty has made over the summer and the things that we can all do to help.
Well, thank you for raising attention to this. There's so much going on in the world, but this is a very obviously important time for climate change, an exceedingly important time. And it would be criminal that if this conference goes off without a full sharing of information.
Mhm. Absolutely. Where can people go to get more information about the statement and ways they can help Amnesty?
Go to the Egyptian country page on Amnesty International's amnesty.org or
Mhm.
amnestyusa.org. You can
All
find them
right.
both there.
All right, great. Thanks again, Geoffrey.
Okay. Thank
Talk
you for
soon.
having me.
Yeah.